So now the engine, put the engine there, and then it should put it down there. So now I'm going to have the map spin around this rather than this spinning itself so the player can always see what's in front of them. But in order to do that, we need to start making a map that will be understandable and not something that's going to be blank. However, I'm not going to start with the actual map objects. I'm going to create a background that will give a sense of movement when there are no actual map objects on the screen. So let's make this, I don't know, some sort of dark purple. Alright, that looks dark enough. And now we need to add some stars. To do that, I'm not just going to add all of them, I'm going to add a few of them. Sorry. I'm going to add a group, and then it will use a function to add all the stars in one by one. So now we have something that looks like a night sky. They all have a slightly different color to them, they all are slightly different size, and they are all spread out in a random configuration. However, this isn't looking quite as dense as I want it to be, so I might add some more objects later on. Or, if I wanted to add more now, I could just raise this number, and then we will have more on screen. However, I'm going to keep this lower right now, because later on, this high number could wind up lagging the game. So this is where I'm going to add input controls. The player will have 3 controls. That will be two for steering, and then 1 to accelerate. I'm going to make this an ambidextrous control scheme. So there will be the typical WASD controls, and there will also be arrow controls. And I'm going to make it caps lock independent, so the player doesn't need to worry about caps lock being on or off. So now the map will spin around the player. There is a base underneath it so that the center is always on the player's spacecraft, so that rotates around the spacecraft and not some random point. That way it actually looks like it is spinning rather than just moving to the side. So this is looking how I want it to. So now I can start doing the movement aspect of this. going to add a small rotation to the acceleration command so that the player will have to worry about balancing the engines rather than just sticking all the engines on one side. The player will need to balance these and if they want the ship to accelerate properly. That is far too sensitive for what I need, so let's try something a little bit less. And let's try making it incredibly unbalanced. Okay, that is good. Maybe make it a little bit more sensitive. Let's get these tanks to make an intentionally unbalanced craft. And there we go. So now the player will need to worry about balancing their spacecraft. Now, let's try doing it the other way. It should rotate left now if we put the engine on the right. Maybe not. Hmm. Well, that's not supposed to happen. I don't know what's causing that. So this takes the center X, which is currently 215, subtracts it by 200, so it's left with 15, and then multiplies that by two, what's that, tenths, hundreds, thousands, millionths, so 2 millionths. So you're left with 0.003, and it's subtracting that. On the other hand, now you have 185, it's negative 15 times 0.002, negative. I don't know what the difference. Oop, I don't know what the difference between this and this is, or what the lack of difference is. One is clearly negative, one is clearly positive, and yeah, they both are coming out as one or the other. I think I have these backwards. No, do I? Okay, what is going on? So even when the engine is balanced, it is still shoving it to the right. correctly. It's also working correctly. That is not. Why? Let's print the rotation velocity. So this will always display how fast the map should be rotating. Print out 0 because no input has been given. So, see what it gets up to. I don't know if it's even scaling properly. Okay, so it gets to right below 4. Let's make it so that, oops, let's see if this is any better. And it's not looking like it. I just noticed that one of the controls is wrong anyways. Put that in there. And I don't know what's causing it to spin like that. Oh, I get it. So Rocket A is, or the Rocket actual piece of it is no longer part of this Rocket A group. It is now part of something in here, so I might have to do Rocket AW. That could solve the problem. First, let's test see if it's all right. That is looking good. There. Okay, it might still just be backwards. Let's make sure it's actually spinning properly first, though. It is. So that means it's backwards. Put it like that. And then let's make our incredibly unbalanced spaceship again. Looks kind of like that one long and skinny spaceship from Star Wars. And there we go. And we can do the same on the other side now. So I need to remember that I cannot use, in the actual engine, I cannot use the group names used in the menu. I have to actually use their weight distributions and their hitboxes. Alright, so now if rocket, well, I guess I have to use this one here to make sure it's actually being used. If it is being used, then it'll do the same thing here, but with rocket B's weight. So now if we have both engines here, it's balanced. Perfect. And I'm going to make it so that an extra engine adds extra power. So we can get rid of this print here. And now I'm going to try to make it spin. So I'm going to go grab a function from one of my other games that I'm working on. There is a specific rotational line that I wrote that has the velocities change with rotation rather than just staying the same. So it actually gives the impression that you are sliding rather than just changing direction and going in that direction. Here it is right here. This game is titled In the Dark. It will be on the library once it's complete. But we're not working on that right now. We are working on this. So this is getting the angle to 0, 0 to where the velocities are. So it puts the velocity as coordinate points and then gets the angle of those, subtracts rotational angle, and then we're not going to have it cancel out because it's space, there's no wind resistance. So this, get the distance from 0, 0 to the velocity x and the velocity y. You have to actually do it first. So a moment of truth. Uh-huh. Wait, no. We have a wobble effect. We invert that. If I invert that and it's been wrong the whole time, it's going to bug me. It has been inverted this whole time. Great. What I'm concerned about though is there a wobble? It's seeming like there might be. I'm hoping there's not, because the wobbles are my worst nightmare in this kind of system. But currently it's seeming like they're. I'm suspicious of a wobble, but I can't see any reason to say that there is one. Okay, now I'm going to make it so that these tanks have weight and they will actually resist the rocket's acceleration. So, this is going to run for both engines too. Why don't we make this a separate function so I only have to write it once? I might make the first engine produce a little bit less power because of this core. So, decent acceleration. Even better acceleration. Slows down a bit. Let's add, oh, get rid of one of those. That's engine. now, the ship is heavy and hard to maneuver, which is what I want right now. Oops, forgot that. Okay, so the heavier one with two engines did not have the function going. Now it should be about the same. I don't know if it's about the same. But you're always going to want a second engine because that gives you more power altogether. Still gives you about 0.2 power, even with all three engines added. Or all three tanks added. Theoretically, if we wanted to, we could just make a little ship like this that's just small and fast. But where the tanks start to come in is I'm going to make the fuel. I'm going to add a fuel bar that will determine how much thrust you can actually put in, and the tanks are what generate that. Call them tanks, but they're gonna more act like batteries. So to get in between the map and the pause menu, and I'm going to add this little bar. Or why don't we make it fancy and just go with a percentage? That answer to that I just answered myself. Players aren't going to really understand it. So let's make a small rectangle close to the bottom. Oops, I got that backwards. And I'm realizing that we're going overtime. That's funny. I'm just going to finish adding the graphics for this, and that'll be it. So this, make it none. And let's get rid of some fuel so it actually looks like it's being used. Alright, perfect. I'm going to lower the opacity on that actually, so the player can see stuff through it. I don't want the UI to be too intrusive, which is why I'm putting it at the bottom rather than that huge open space at the top, because open space at the top is where we're going. I want them to be able to see that. So this currently down here, this is looking like exactly where I want it. It's not in front of them, so it's not really intruding their view. There's no reverse, so it's not like they're trying to accelerate that way anyways. So each engine will take a certain amount of fuel. They can only activate if they have enough fuel, and, well, the tanks will slowly generate that fuel. The more tanks you have, the faster it'll regenerate, and the more you can use your engines. However, it's a trade-off because the tanks are heavy, and this fuel will get used faster just to get to the same speed. Alright, so that is it for today, for this week. Next week, we might start doing some map objects and get these stars to actually scroll past, they can scroll around, so that way there's not just one random rectangle of stars. It will continuously generate as the player moves. But that's all for this week.